Welcome to the ARC Hive Podcast, where we explore the arcs of our individual journeys and the strength of the hive that holds us together. I'm Amy Rost, and I believe that life isn't meant to be navigated alone. Here, we dive into conversations that bring us closer to ourselves, to each other, and to the communities that lift us up. This is a space for real stories, honest reflections, and meaningful connection. Whether you're in a season of transition, seeking deeper relationships, or simply craving conversations that inspire growth, the Hive is for you. Because we come together, we grow stronger. Welcome to the archive. I am so excited to have you here today, and this special episode is the very first interview episode on the ARC Hive Podcast. And I am so happy to sit down with my dear friend, Carrie Miller Scamnzy, to chat about sound healing and movement. And we're really going to explore sound bath, breath work, and movement, and how that can transform the way we navigate our lives every day and really promote healing. So I am so excited to have you here, Carrie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's kick off. Let's just chat a little bit about how we met, because I feel like a lot of people maybe don't know that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right? So we first connected, believe it or not, online. That is where it started. We connected through Pilates. We were in the same business group. And then the pandemic hit. And I found my best bud in the pandemic. It was like, that was a good thing that came out of it. Right?
Yeah. So I'll never forget. I was online with you at the same time, and you just messaged me like, "Can we chat?" And through this business group, in the moment, right? We went through the shutdown of the pandemic, and you can tell your story, Amy, about your family and what you had to go through. But I was struggling. I mean, I'm just going to be real. I went from working to non-working, homeschooling a second grader that I had to teach to read, and a fourth grader. My husband was at home, and it was a scary season, and we were all isolated. And Amy just said, "Can you chat?" And I'm thinking, yes, let's start this conversation.
Yeah. And it was a conversation that turned into so much, to many more conversations, really. But at a time, I think being in that business group and hearing, like, so often I struggled to hear was hearing what I was going through that somebody else was going through. And that it wasn't, my family had some additional challenges, and I'll talk about that on another podcast at the time of the pandemic. But I felt like we really struggled to find, someone in that same season. Like, I all of a sudden had 3 kids at home, husband home, and it was really like a time we could have never imagined, and it was so isolating. And then to find such a good friend in that season was, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so glad I messaged you that day, because my life is so much better having Carrie in it. So
Well,
I'm
likewise, Amy. And you know, making adult friendships is hard.
really.
And I think it comes down to those core values. And I was able to walk with you through that dark season, and you were able to walk with me through that dark season. And that isn't always easy for people.
And I can say that from being, a mom with a kid who's really sick. Is, we lost a lot of friendships along the way because people couldn't walk with us. It was just too much. And so to be able to find, that meaningful connection and friendship that we have now is, has really walked us through. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to community today. But I want to kick off just the first part a little bit. And I really want, I want you to dive into a little bit of your own story. First of all, like, Carrie is a well-seasoned Pilates professional. was a professional dancer. But I want to not go there. I want to go into like what led you to the sound healing and breath work.
Yeah. So for me, my journey has always been one thing builds upon another. So going from that professional dancer to choreographer, and then from choreographer into Pilates teacher, and then Pilates teacher into specializing in micro movements of fascia and breath. And I had been studying with Madeline Black. I had in 2018 and 19 gone to San Francisco, done her training, which was quite intense, a 30-hour intensive, very biomechanics. It took me 6 months to kind of process that. And then during the pandemic, I took her workshop online, and she taught one class about breath. And I felt the shift. And I was called to that. And luckily, through that business group, I was recommended a breathwork teacher out of Palm Springs. So I started to study with Jay Bradley, and that changed my world. I went
Fellow,
to,
we might add, Jay
yeah,
Bradley.
yeah. And so I went to it was in 2021, I went to a retreat with him and Bella Rivera, and she was doing the sound and he was doing the breath. We were outside. We had to take the COVID test before we even could be at the retreat. And the birds were chirping, and it was so cleansing. It was so connecting to a part of myself that I didn't know that I lost. And the vibration of the sound just moved through me in a way that was so cleansing, like the ocean, like I was at the ocean and I couldn't go right to the ocean. So I realized the power of these tools right away. And I was like, okay, I have to study them. And I had always had an interest in the sound. During 2020, I sent Amy an image of the sound bowls. I was like, oh, one day I want to do this. But for me, that was a hard bridge to cross. The breath work is similar to teaching movement, but sound was like me as a musician. And that was a skill because I was a dancer and with so many incredible musicians my entire career. I was like, can I even do this? Can I even tap into that? And I did. And and it took me a while. I was not good right away. And I didn't understand music theory or what the vibration, but I knew that if I just kept with that beginner's mindset and I had a wonderful teacher, that I would figure it out.
And trusting the process a little bit, right? Which is no different than Pilates or really anything we do in life is, we've got to just sometimes trust in the process that we will learn as we go through it. She was
And I've
better
always, right, I've
than
always known that I'm consistent. So whatever I do consistently, I do get better. That's just something I learned from practicing Pilates, from taking workshops over time, that it just takes time to integrate. And I gave myself that liberty of doing it poorly for a little while, right? There's just no other way to say it. And I should say messy. It was just messy. And then it got better and better and better.
Inspired action,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And like Mel Robbins says, doing the reps. And
Yes,
we've just
yes.
got to do the reps before we get good at anything. Also, like Malcolm Gladwell, it's 10,000 hours, right? 10,000 hours to really, really get good at a craft. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to put in the reps, and yeah, and you're a beautiful teacher of all of it. I've experienced it all, you guys, and it's beautiful.
Thank you, Amy.
Um, let's go a little bit into how now are you incorporating this into some of your movement practices? How do you incorporate some of the sound and the vibrational healing?
So breath work and sound baths are meditation. And I will tell you, for most people, meditation is harder than movement. We are so driven to be productive, to do, and to flip that into the opposite of to be, and not like to be watching TV and Netflix, like to literally be. and listen into your environment is so tough.
So
Those
tough.
sound and breath are those bridges that help us come into meditation. I have a very difficult time with seated meditation. It is not my favorite. I cannot sit for 45 minutes not moving. But a sound bath, I can lay down, I can let the vibration hit me, I can allow the energy to move through the body and clear it. The breath work is a little bit more active. I'm able to send the breath into places that are tight. So we know that the emotions get stuck in our connective tissue and it has to be released. And most of us, movement does help a lot. It does. However, there is this other layer. And when we get into that other layer, the energetic body, we're talking about the nervous system.
Yeah. And I think it's, as Pilates professionals and we teach movement, I know for when I experience this, I'm also not good at sitting for 45 minutes trying to quiet my brain because my brain just keeps going. But it's almost like the breath work and the sound bath it's that permission to drop you in really quick. And you can really start to feel the change that it's creating in the body. Maybe talk a little bit about the science behind them, because I think like sometimes it's like, oh, this is maybe a woo woo modality, but I actually think like
No,
the
there's a
breath
ton of science.
and the breath work and the Pilates, and we're going to talk about this in community in a minute, but the breath work and the Pilates go together. I feel like, I mean, breath work is part of what we kind of teach loosely in Pilates, but here's like another layer that we certainly aren't accessing in our day to day.
And now I forgot the question.
What's some science? What's some science behind it? Sorry.
The science, thank you. So we detoxify through our breath. Most people breathe very shallow. When we shallow breathe, we don't work through our 4 diaphragms from our pelvic floor, AKA pelvic diaphragm, all the way up to our cranial diaphragm. So we need that movement of the 4 diaphragms like a jellyfish from our pelvic floor, pelvic diaphragm, all the way to the crown of our head. And there's a rhythm that happens when we are stressed and chronic inflammation, sleep deprived, all of that internal rhythm gets shut down. So when we come into a breathwork session, we not only do we reinvigorate the cells with fresh oxygen, we detox as we exhale, and it's active. You can lose weight through breath work because 70% will come out through the breath.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is incredible.
I think this is a piece we talk about it in our self-care wellness toolboxes that isn't really mainstream yet, but this is not new. This isn't a new modality. This has been around a long time. We've been breathing a long time.
So this is Western culture, right? Like Western culture takes a little longer, right, to adapt. It's easier to do than to be. I mean, as Americans, we're gonna go after those dreams, right? We're gonna do. And Canadians, I don't know, maybe you're a bit in the same way, right? But the Eastern culture has this more of a sense of being, less doing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the sound. The vibrations literally hit the cells in your body because they're made of water. If you have a part of you, let's just say a rotator cuff injury, that you feel tight and achy and naggy, the sound will literally hit the body and bring that vibration of the tissue up and in. So now I've got to go back and talk about hands-on work with Pilates and fascia. So our hands have 300 times the energetic power. When I am intentional with someone and I lay hands on them to do a fascia release or a fascia unwinding, which is very gentle, my hands help the tissue bring up the vibration. If I have a class of 12, I can't lay hands on 12 people at the same time and sit there for 5 minutes and allow that to happen. But with sound, I can teach seven to 12 students, and I can see the resonance and I can see the changes with their bodies without even touching them.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Um, and I think, as we go into this next section, talking about the community piece of sound and breath work, it's, in a group setting can really almost like amplify the energy of a room. So let's talk about Pilates Fest North. So I probably should talk Pilates Fest North in 2020 was supposed to happen. Of course, you know what happened. We got shut down. It was really the first Pilates conference of its kind in Canada, that there really wasn't very many options for teachers. And so I'm like, all right, well then let's just do one here. Like, why should we have to travel? Why we need to come together as a the Canadian Pilates industry and get to know each other, learn from each other, share with each other, like know about each other, what's happening. And so the first one happened in 2021. And then in 2024, we went on the road to Kamloops and we did a pop-up. And we had an incredible weekend of movement and Pilates teachers from all over Canada. Actually, I think you were the only American.
I think I was.
I think you were the only American. And let's talk about that closing ceremony because, and just even maybe the experience from your end, because as I was in it, I was the planner, I was the the everything of it. I find it sometimes a little hard to drop in, but from the outside, maybe let's share about because we had an experience there that I will be hard to replicate. It was very powerful. Let's chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was really lucky because I was able to be with Amy through this entire process of her building the conference. I saw the labor that she put in. I saw her intentionality of really trying to bring all different types of Pilates teachers in Canada together, from your club Pilates to your very classical, Jay Grimes or Romana styles, like, and everything in between. So it was a beautiful gathering of many different teachers and modalities, from anatomy trains and fascia movement to some neuro repatterning that was Feldenkrais based. And it was just, the programming was incredible. And to have, 3 days of that, a presenter's dinner that invited everyone to the table, and then to finish that final day with a community mat moment where every teacher got around and taught a piece of the return to life mat. And then we had the healer, we had the breath and sound with some hands-on work. And I have never facilitated such a big group. So that was a first for me because I had smaller groups of 10. So we had
We were like 35.
35, and the space was pretty intimate, so we could feel the energy in the room. These ladies had, and gentlemen, had been the whole weekend spending it together. So to finish with such a powerful moment of breathing together, breathing as one, and most of them have never had a sound bath before and had never done the diaphragmic breathwork healing. They dropped into a very, very deep state. Some of them were so invigorated, it was just like they were almost buzzing with energy. Others had a major detox, and they were able to shed some old emotions and old trauma that they didn't even know they were carrying. And to see everyone together and hands-on healing with the fascia release as the sounds were washing over them. I mean, I was brought to tears, but I had to pull it back. But
I
it
think I
was
wiping my tears because it was the I'd never experienced the energy of a room like that before. And I've experienced myself, I felt like the the power of sound and breath work in my own body, but seeing this in this setting it was palpable. Like you like it was within ourselves as well, right? Even
yeah.
though we weren't doing it, we were, we, it felt like it was infiltrating us just as much.
And it does. So in a sound bath and breath work, you can't separate the teacher from the student. I am also a student within it, and I do get the effects. And there is endorphins that happens during the breath work, but it's also at the same time where your nervous system is calming down. So it's unlike Pilates where we like build more power and strength, it's actually the opposite. The slower you come into the breath, the more control, the more endorphins and the more dynamic that is. So it's just this beautiful place of hovering where the brain waves drop down into the theta, and you can get that consciousness, you can get those deep ideas, you can come into a place where it's very restorative and healing.
Yeah, and I think, it was almost like an equalizer for the community. It actually didn't matter where we were trained, where we came from, what beliefs we brought into an event like that. Is it put us all on this equal playing field.
So
And
breath and sound are a sense of helping us become one body,
yeah,
because the cueing is inhale, exhale, and we're all on the same breath.
which is something so beautiful to see. As a movement teacher, I always love when there's just something about a room full of teachers breathing together. And that was like breathing together, like amped up even more.
Yeah, and they were ready, right? They had spent the whole
Oh,
weekend together and moving, and so this was just like the volume was already up, and then it just went beyond the dial, and everybody had such a beautiful experience.
yeah, and I think so many really felt the transformational power of that session. And again, like you described, it was in different ways for each individual, but it was something that, then they got to, take with them as they went back into their communities and back into teaching. And I think it's an experience that I think anyone who is there will not soon forget. The power that, and for me, it's always that power of community, but how also can we heal in community? Because it goes back to us not being able to do it alone. We need each other. We need each other. And in that moment, we had each other with no expectations, no special rules. We were just there as human beings breathing.
And I think it's often overlooked in the Pilates teacher community how many healers there are. And I know that. I saw that in that room. I felt the energy of that in that room. And we downplay that, like our resonance, our vibration, who we are, how we show up in the room, how we come into the room, how we hold the space for our students. There are so many Pilates teachers that are healers, but they don't like to use that term. I don't even like to use that term. And I do a lot of the more woo stuff, right, with the breath and the sound. But that they tapped it, they let themselves go there, and they trusted you and they trusted me enough to say, I'm on this journey with you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really one of my favorite memories. And it really left an impact, and really also in that moment had me look at our community maybe a little differently. And I wasn't anticipating that, is to look at, there was no dialogue about training or any of that. We really we were to that real human connection, and that simplicity of breath is what really, I think, brought us together in many ways.
Me too. Well done.
Yeah. So let's, I mean, Carrie will probably be back on this podcast because honestly, we could talk forever. But one of the questions I do ask is, what is a question you wish you would be asked? And let's go here a little bit, just quickly. Let's talk about, so as much as we have communities, and we have communities such as Pilates teachers, but many of us are moms. How do we juggle being a mom, being a healer, really looking towards that? For us, a word keeps coming up is holistic, how do we do all of that and be a mom at the same time? Just share a little bit about that for our listeners, because that's another community for us that we sometimes, I think, overlook. And it's more accessible to us when children are small versus when children are a little bigger. How do you make it work?
Yeah. And so, my career, I've gone full-time, part-time, not working when my dad had some health issues, to working just a little bit, homeschooling my kids, not working. Like, it has been very nonlinear. And that's hard because my drive, I am more of a type A. I want to be in the studio every day. I want to be working with clients. I want to be teaching sound and breath. And I also want to be there for my children. So and I'm the primary parent. So that is the way I've been married for over 20 years. And that's just the way we've structured it. And there have been seasons when my son had a concussion and he had also an injury to both of his feet that I've had to take a real big step back from being that career mom that I desire to focusing healing on the family. And it wasn't easy. And I'm fortunate I have a great support system around me, that friends were like, you have all the time in the world. This is such a short season with them. You're doing the right thing. And that little nugget of my inner circle being there has allowed me to say, it's okay. There's no race to be at the end of this journey. There's a part of me that I want to be a thought influencer. I want to help the Pilates community create more inclusion. I want to help women, especially midlife, find these other modalities of sound and breath and tools and holisticness in each other. So that's where the drive comes from. And I don't have to be all in. I can still be full passion and part-time.
Yeah. And I think, there aren't a lot of examples of what really being an entrepreneur and being a mom raising kids at home is. Like, we kind of get to see one side. We don't, and look, we don't all share the messy side of trying to do all the things, or how we even, start to create schedules, or like you said, it's just non-linear. And I think we just giving ourselves permission, and I think also just talking about it, right? Like, both of us do not have 24/7 to work in a business. And I
No.
want to be an example to moms and women in their midlife that you don't have to do that. You get to decide, and we can put in some systems and make some choices and create some boundaries, but that there isn't just one way to do it. And I hope that this conversation for people really lands in, just as there's not one way to just work out. Like, we come in often with a Pilates lens because that's what we do, but also now looking at these other modalities, what is it that you need today? How could you experience, you know, better stress relief, better sleep? Like, if I do the breathwork class, I was saying to Carrie, if I do the breathwork class every night before bed, I have a great sleep. But it's sometimes finding the 45 minutes before bed to get to drop into it is the bigger challenge. But I know I have other modalities available to me. And I feel like in this middle age, that is really what has supported, that has really turned my schedule, or those tools for me, has really changed for me and what I need in this season. So, Carrie, can you tell people how they can find you or how they can work with you?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram at Carrie Miller Pilates. And you can also check out my website, which is carriemillerpilates.com.
And if you're ever in the Scottsdale area, she does do in-person breathwork and sound classes. I highly recommend you guys try and check it out. And we will have all this in the show notes so that you can find Carrie if something in this episode today landed for you, calls you into, perhaps trying something new to support you. But I'm pretty sure Carrie will be back to have many more conversations. This is short for us. But I want to say thank you so much for being part of the ARC Hive podcast today. I hope this episode left you feeling inspired, connected, and reminded you that you are never alone on this journey. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your takeaways and tag me on social media at arc.pilates. And let's keep this hive buzzing. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and invite someone who you care about to join us. Until next time, keep honoring your arc, leaning into the hive, and showing up for yourself and your community, because we are better together and we are stronger together. This is the ARC Hive Podcast. See you soon.